Web Marketing That Works, episode 76.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
Hi there, my name is Toby Jenkins, and this is the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. This is the show for people who love marketing on the web. We're going to take you behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and where we plan to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. So in this show, I really wanted to share with you my interview with Ben Love, who's the founder of a 10-year-old business, Grassroots IT. Now, Ben and I today really jump into what has worked and what hasn't, as we always do in this show. And there's a couple of things that he really uncovers, which is his experience with social media, and particularly a surprising twist for him that took his webinars from no inquiries to 60% inquiry rate, which is amazing. He also shares some of the fears that he was able to overcome about starting a webinar that I think holds a really fantastic lesson for people who might be starting out on webinar or podcasting or content creation journey too, which is that fear of, will anyone listen or watch or read? And I think he shares some great ways of getting around that. My favourite quote from the show today is actually Ben's marketing philosophy, which he says focuses on two things, community and education. So I think that is a fantastic philosophy, and he explains in a whole lot more detail what he means by those two concepts. So this show is brought to you by our book, Web Marketing That Works, and specifically the bonus 33 free templates that go with it. So you can download them from bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Let's get started. Ben, thanks so much for joining me on the show, mate. It's really good to have you with me.
Thanks, mate. Great to be here.
The first question actually I'd like to ask, that I ask most of our guests, is what sort of fires you up to get you started each morning?
Oh, look, it's a fantastic question. It's not the first time I've been asked, and it is still a really hard one to answer. Because, you know, it's something inside. I don't get fired up by material things, you know what I mean? Like, I appreciate a fancy car, but it's not something that motivates me. It's something a little bit less tangible inside me. I love business. I love solving problems. I love working with people and helping people solve their problems and achieve their goals. Now, whether that be my clients or whether that be my staff or my partners who I work with, I think that sort of stuff that's what really pumps me up in the morning, I think. That's what really gets me out of bed and gets me firing.
Yeah, awesome. That's cool. I can certainly resonate with that as well. So let's talk about Grassroots IT, which is your business. Can you talk to us a bit about your journey to sort of start, up until starting Grassroots IT, and then, it's been 9 years and 9 months. I think from what I saw, September will be your 10-year anniversary, which is amazing. So can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me think. I was definitely one of those kids who liked playing with computers. I mean, I pestered my poor, long-suffering mother for a Commodore 64 until she finally caved in a lot of years ago now, obviously. But I think my interest in technology certainly started way back then, as did my interest in business. I mean, I was one of those kids who would set up the lemonade stand on the front sidewalk, and try and peddle stuff to the neighbours as they walked past. I was one of those kids who would buy the cheap cartons of soft drinks at the supermarket and then take it to high school and flog them off can by can for 100% markup. It's that sort of stuff's always been in my blood. So, I mean, I passed through university. I did a business degree, did some arts degree there, and ended up really falling straight into technology as the career, more so than business or commerce or accounting or any of those things that my formal education might have pointed me towards. I worked through a number of different jobs in my career. I've touched on a lot of different parts of technology. I've done software development, web development, sales, a lot of technical stuff, systems administration, help desk, you name it, until probably about 10 years ago now. I think you just said, goodness, has it really been 10 years?
Apparently so, according to your LinkedIn profile.
Holy dooly, mate. I'm sure I was meant
September
to be retired.
2005.
I'm sure I was meant to be retired on a beach somewhere after the 10-year mark. I better get my skates on. So anyway, mate, so my wife and I, Annie, had been working up on one of the islands up in North Queensland, up in the Whitsundays there. And we'd been there for a couple of years and we decided it was time to move on. So we went travelling for a few months and we were sitting having our coffee one morning. It was in LA actually. And we were due to fly back home to Brisbane literally the next morning. And we were trying to work out, well, what are we going to do with our lives? I mean, we had no job. It was a very big question, man, for 7:30 on a Tuesday morning or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But we were in the most remarkable position because we literally had nothing to come back to. Right? We had no house, we had no mortgage or no lease on a house, we had no car, we had we had some moderate possessions back here, a bit of furniture or something from when we had lived in Brisbane, but that was all in storage. So, but there was really no imperative, for us to come back to Brisbane. So we were literally sitting there going, well, do we miss the flight? Do we not go back to Brisbane? Do we stay overseas or whatever the case may be? Now, I was partway through the process of interviewing and going through recruitment hoops with one of the big consulting firms at that stage. So that was certainly on the cards as well. But look, we decided to get the flight. We headed back to Brisbane and what's turning into a long story cut short, we decided to start Grassroots IT. But we were in such a fortuitous position to be able to do that because we had no overheads, we had no obligations. If we started this business and did not get a single client and did not make a single dollar, it did not matter because we had no rent to pay, we had no dependents. It was just the most amazing opportunity, and I can see that more so in hindsight, to be honest, than I could at the time. But that's where it started. So we literally started Grassroots IT in the garage of my in-laws' house. Right. With an old, borrowed, clunky old Pentium 3 computer that I had to sort of breathe some life back into, sitting down there by myself. And it was literally a bare concrete garage with the big old-fashioned metal flip-up door. And I can tell you, in winter, it was freezing. So because it was open to the elements, essentially. So I would be down there working on the business until all hours of night, wearing maybe 2 pairs of tracksuit pants and a couple of jumpers and at times a little fan heater, going on my feet and some fingerless gloves so I could type. It's a great story. I make it sound like a story of hardship, but in reality it wasn't. In reality, it was just a whole heap of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, certainly Adam and I have felt similarly. When we started, one of the big reasons for starting Bluewire was the fact that neither of us had anything to lose. In a very similar position to what you've just described. And, we were on the back decks of our parents' places and basically swinging between those sorts of areas and trying to make the most of it. So it's kind of a reassuring starting point, I think, as well, from a business standpoint, to know that there's kind of nothing to lose and I guess go and get a job if it doesn't work out, right?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm honestly not sure if I could do it again today. I mean, I'm at a substantially different point in life, these days. I don't know. I reckon it'd be a tough decision these days, to take that risk. Yeah, realistically, I'd probably do it. But, I'd probably lose even more sleep this time around than I did last time.
Yeah, for sure. And so can you share a bit more about what Grassroots IT is now then?
Yeah, look, these days, Grassroots IT, in the IT arena, we are what's called an MSP, or a managed service provider. When we started the business, we didn't really know that's what it was called. I'm not sure that acronym existed back then, but these days it does. We provide IT support services to small business clients, basically. We provide help desk, we provide project work, so things like server upgrades, network and PC deployments. We're doing more and more cloud activity. Microsoft Office 365 is a big part of what we do. We basically are an outsourced IT support company. So it's not so much time-based billing, if you will, sort of hourly billing for ad hoc work. It's more what's called value-based billing. So fixed price contracts, basically, with agreed deliverables within a scope, within that fixed price.
Yeah, great. Okay, and you guys are based in Brisbane. What's the team size these days?
Oh, look, we've got a new fella starting with us on Monday, which will take our technical team up to 6 people. We also then have another few people involved in admin, marketing, back office, etc. I'd say our full-time equivalency, because we've got a couple of part-timers and a couple of contractor VA type things in there, I'd say our full-time equivalency is probably around 10. But to be honest, I haven't done the maths.
No, that's fine. As long as the work's getting done, that's the main thing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so where are you spending most of your time in the business then?
Mate, I have had quite a remarkable 18 months, shall I say, because early in 2014, I really reached the point where it was time to learn about marketing and learn about that side of things. Our business had grown through referrals, through word of mouth, and through a bit of accidental marketing. People just somehow managed.
What's an example of that?
I'm sorry?
What's an example of, the incidental or accidental marketing?
Oh, someone driving past on the main road and happened to see our sign.
Yep.
Maybe a very lucky Google search, which just happened to go our way.
Yep.
Something like that. It was more through serendipity than through any good planning or strategy, I guess, of ours, that things were coming our way. I mean, obviously we were doing something right. We were getting a substantial amount of referrals. We were able to really grow the business on the back of repeat business. I mean, our client turnover is extremely low. So that all very much worked in our favour. But at the beginning of 2014, I got to the point where I had such an amazing team in place, and I still do to this day, such an incredible team, that I was able to shift my focus a little bit away from the day-to-day operational side of the business and start to learn about marketing. And can I tell you, I mean, I'd long been aware that marketing was a real black spot for me. There's a number of parts of the business which I'm quite comfortable with. I'm comfortable enough with finance, with the technical IT side of it. HR I'm getting better at. There's those areas there. But marketing, wow, big black spot for me. So I had a really conscious turning point. And that's when I really started to pick up on concepts and ideas such as inbound marketing, content marketing, a lot of those sort of ideas. So really since then, I'm obviously still involved in the operation, but more and more of my time has been spent focusing on those areas, really to try and develop a marketing and a business growth engine within the business.
Yeah, that's great. It is really interesting to think that, you've got the business and now I guess it's about taking it to a new level through your marketing, right?
Well, that's exactly right. Look, I had a great conversation with a very good friend and colleague of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he essentially asked me the question, of these three different phases that you can consider your business in, where are you now? And the three phases were focusing on profitability, focusing on operational and delivery issues, or focusing on business growth and revenue growth, right? And it was really interesting because I could almost pin it down and say, okay, well, for the first 5 years of the business, I was focused on profitability, right? Because we were very small and I needed to make enough money to pay the rent and cover payroll and that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And then for the next 5 years of the business, I was really very focused on operational service delivery. So that's when, a lot of my attention was really focused on quality issues, on proceduralizing stuff and making sure we were consistently and repeatedly delivering the services and the quality that was appropriate. And now we're almost into that third phase. And sure enough, I'm turning my attention now to essentially to scale and to business growth. And the engine that's going to drive that is marketing.
Great point to jump into, obviously, on the marketing front, because that's, one of the things that we really like to dive into, obviously, in this podcast. But do you have an overall sort of guiding marketing philosophy then now from, that you've decided on over the last 14 months or 16 months of?
Look, let me tell you one thing that may give a bit of context. In our business, we don't have a marketing department. We don't have a marketing function. Okay, we have called it our community and education department, right? So we don't have a marketing manager, we've got a community manager. Okay, that to me sort of summarizes how we're approaching it. What we're really trying to do, what we're about is investing our efforts and our money back into the community, either our existing community of clients and partners and suppliers and prospects and so on, but also investing in that potential community of leads and prospects and, clients that we haven't met yet. So that really drives a lot of the ethos behind where we put our efforts. So that comes back to, that ties in very nicely with the whole concept of inbound marketing, content marketing too, because it's all about giving back value. It's all about educating people. It's all about sharing your knowledge. And that really fits in well with my personal philosophies, as well as that business strategy which we've defined to take us forward in our community and education effort.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love that, the community and education. And, you know, HubSpot obviously have really blown up the inbound marketing as a piece of, I guess, a marketing terminology these days, but also content marketing more broadly. And that concept that to educate your audience and your community is that the community has the power to access all this information themselves anyway. So why not become the trusted advisor, you know, long before they even make contact? I'd love to hear that, mate. That's a great way of looking at it as community and education. That's really cool.
Look, it's just a win-win or a win-win-win, or, you know, whichever way you put it. It's, you know, I think everyone can gain something out of that approach.
So what are you actually doing then activity-wise? And then we might even jump into some examples of, you know, what's worked and what hasn't, if that's all right after that. But I mean, in terms of your activity at the moment, where are you at? What sort of mechanisms are you using?
Yeah, look, great question. We have a website, and we started, well, we're kind of just coming to the end of a project to do a fairly major rework of that website. We've had the website for quite a while, but because of the way we were getting that website through an agency model from an agency that provided it, essentially, we were a bit limited and restricted with what we could do with it. So we've recently just finished what's turned out to be a bigger than I expected project to everybody who develops a website says that, don't they? I think that's par for the course.
Yep.
It's like renovating a house, you know. Oh, gee, it was bigger than I expected. So anyway, we've got the website there. We're making sure we're ticking all the boxes in regards to the website. Okay, so it's got a modern design. We're paying attention to issues such as above the fold, and that we're paying attention to issues such as making sure it's a mobile-friendly website, a responsive website for different platforms. So computers, tablets, mobile phones, etc. I mean, obviously, Google have recently brought out a little tweak to their algorithm in regards to how they're dealing with mobile search results, and your website must receive the great green tick of Google to maintain its rankings there. So there's certainly a lot of attention that we're paying there. We're paying attention to things like on-page SEO and so on. That's obviously very important. But a lot of that's fairly mechanical, though. That's fairly easy to sort of go through and tick the boxes on that. And to my way of thinking, that's really just a baseline. That's just non-negotiable. You've just got to have that sort of stuff in place to really enter the game, okay? Table stakes, if you will. We are blogging. So more and more we are creating our own blog content rather than reusing other people's content or benefiting from syndicated content. And obviously the art behind crafting an effective blog post, you know, you could run an entire, in fact, I'm sure people do run an entire podcast on.
There's entire businesses on entire blogs written about blogging.
The art of blogging, hey? So, and look, I'm very much an amateur in that regard, and I'm learning every day. But I got to say, I'm getting more and more confident with it. I think one of the big things there is learning how to write for your audience and not necessarily for your peers, and that can be quite hard in a technical industry.
Yeah.
So that's a very important focus there. And really just trying to, well, for starters, identify who your audience is, you know, and there's a lot of ways to slice and dice that. You know, you can do your client avatars or your emotion mapping and all this sort of stuff. But one way or another, you've got to make sure that you're writing for your target audience. And, you know, that's much easier said than actually done. But I'm getting better at that side too. Look, we are definitely engaging in social media. I am constantly monitoring that for its effectiveness. I can't see us ever quitting social media. I don't think that would happen. But to be honest, if you were to ask me what sort of an ROI I am getting on a lot of my social media activity, not a whole heck of a lot, to be honest.
Yep.
But again, we haven't done a really hard focus on a lot of our social media properties to date. So there is a lot of room for us to explore there and hopefully, you know, start to see a bit more benefit from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point to make that I think is relevant, which is, you know, social media is the icing on the cake.
Absolutely. Look, you've got. I'm sorry to interrupt.
You've got a website, yeah. And
you've got to take a wagon wheel or a spider web or whatever visual you want to picture, but your website's got to be at the center of it. right? Your website's got to be right dead in the middle of the whole exercise. Actually, there's a great podcast that I get a lot of value from. There's a couple of guys out there. There's Taki Moore and James Schramko.
Yeah.
And they run a fantastic podcast, which is the, the Sales Marketing Profit podcast. And one of the concepts that they run through there is basically owning the race course or owning the racetrack. I'm sorry, Taki and James. I can't remember which one it was. But essentially what they're saying there is, if you're running a business here, don't just build that business on Facebook, for example, because you know what? Facebook could come along and change the rules.
Which they have done many times.
And which they continue to do on a daily basis. So, if you base your entire business on somebody else's platform, well, you're at their beck and call because they're running their business, not yours, right? So you really need to have your own website, which is the hub of all of this activity. But then what you've got is you've got these spokes that go out. And you might have your social media, you might have Facebook, you might have LinkedIn, you might have Twitter, whatever your channels might be. You might have a podcast. But then you've also got your other activities. You've got your outreach there to make contact with like-minded partners and complementary partners. But you've also got your offline activities there. You've got your networking, you've got your real-world events, you've got all this other stuff. And these all can draw back into your website at the center of all of these efforts.
Mm. No, it's a pretty damn good overview there, Ben. Thanks.
So are we done?
Yeah, I think so. We'll just put that on repeat. So let's talk about what has worked and what hasn't then. If you're happy to share, let's start off with what hasn't worked, and then we can work our way up to finish on the good notes. But what hasn't worked for you or what hasn't worked well? What have you done differently to remedy that? Can you share a story around that?
Oh, mate, I could. How long have you got, by the way? How long does this recording software last? You got enough hard drive space there, mate? We could go on about this forever. We might send out for pizzas, hey, for lunch. Oh, goodness. Okay, Twitter. Okay.
Yep.
Whole lot of fun. I actually quite enjoy it. I find it a fantastic research tool. I take a lot from Twitter, right? I get a lot of interesting reading content and ideas from Twitter. I have received almost zero traction for our own efforts on Twitter, though. Okay?
Yep.
There's one. Another one. With the website, finding the right balance between having the skills and capacity in-house versus outsourcing it. And if you do outsource, which bits and to whom? So it's very easy in this world of outsourcing and virtual assistants and Odesk and so on, to find somebody who can work on your website for you or work on your SEO for you. There's an even better one.
Yeah.
But a lot of those people are rubbish. But a lot of the people who are very good are very, very task based, right? They won't necessarily be in a position, through no personal failing of their own, but they won't necessarily be in a position to offer much initiative or creative guidance or really constructive direction or input on what you should be doing with your website and how you should be doing it. So what we're finding, and believe me, still tweaking, and I think forever will be tweaking, is the right balance between which bits of the process do you indeed have to keep in-house by engaging someone locally or by just doing yourself or whatever the case may be, and which bits of that can you give to some sort of an outsourced provider. So finding the right balance there is a bit of a challenge, and it is an ongoing effort, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, I think that's true of a lot of the web stuff, is that, as a business owner or marketing manager, there does need to be an element of mastery, even if in terms of the overall concepts and how it fits into the strategy, and then how that translates into the actual day-to-day actions that are required. Then it's figuring out how best to delegate those various areas.
That's exactly right. But, you can't just hand it off, I don't think, unless you've got some sort of a massive, massive budget, to be able to do so.
Yeah.
It's at the small business end of the spectrum, probably, look, even at the medium business end of the spectrum, I think there's always going to be part of that you need to keep in-house, just so that you maintain that authentic voice, if nothing else.
Yeah, because you can't outsource your personality is something that we always talk to people about.
I know you can't. That's it. So you've got to
I hope you can't.
Yeah, well, maybe one day. I don't know. So anyway, that's enough said on that point.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
There are a couple of things that haven't worked. Well, that haven't worked or that have been challenges for us. Can I tell you something that has worked?
Yeah, please.
Webinars.
Yes. Talk us through that.
How much do I love webinars? So we started probably, I'm going to say actually probably around beginning of 2014, when, as I said, when I started turning my attention to these sort of things. Probably mid-2014 it was, by the time I sort of worked up the gumption to do it. We started running some webinars. They were really initially designed just for our existing clients, short and sweet, 30-minute lunch and learn type arrangements. And I was really keen to do it, but I was a little bit nervous, about the whole thing, a little bit of stage fright, never done this before. What if no one shows up to my party? Will I look like a loser type thing?
Familiar with all those sentiments?
Familiar with those, mate, yeah. But you know what? I thought, worst case scenario, if nobody shows up to this webinar, I'm going to record it. I'm going to do up a transcript of it, and I'm going to stick it on my blog, and it's going to be a blog post with some fantastic keywords in there. So, with the recorded video. So I thought, really, I've got nothing to lose on this. So, look, we started scheduling.
That's a great way of looking at it, Ben, because I think that fear of the no one showing up to my party is a huge obstacle to people getting started. And I think, listeners should take note, really, of the fact that it isn't, even if you do it, and as long as you record it, get the transcript, it's never wasted. That content will live on forever. So
absolutely not. And, even if you do a webinar and nobody turns up, or even if we had the same experience with our podcast of it, because we've got a podcast as well, the Small Business Tech Show. And, we obviously had the same stage fright from that. What if we record this whole podcast thing and nobody listens? But then we sort of thought, well, you know what? We're going to have a bit of fun with it. And I record that with a mate of mine, Ben, who's also in the industry. And, man, we have a blast. We sit down and we get to catch up and we have so much fun simply recording the show. But then we've recorded the show and we get it out there. And you know what? It's on the website. It's some more SEO juice. You've got the transcripts there. If somebody does come across it, great. You're just offering that little bit more authenticity, that little bit more, I hate the term thought leadership, but help me. What's the big word? You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Basically, you demonstrate
building your authority and demonstrating expertise. Yeah.
That's the big word I was looking for. So even if no one turns up to the party, you're still ahead of the game and it's still worthwhile doing. But anyway,
back to the webinars.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, mate.
That's fine. So I'm interested. So you've experimented. How frequently are you doing them? What length are you doing them for? What's your sort of promotion process? So getting into some of the nitty gritty on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, 2014, we were doing them once a month. Okay, we didn't want to push the envelope too much there in case no one showed up to the party. So it was once a month. We stopped doing them over late November, December, just because of the Christmas period. And we were really focused on launching the podcast around there too. So that's sort of, we sort of, diverted our attention a little bit from webinars to podcasts at about that time. We're turning the webinars on again this year. It'll still be once a month. It's going to be 30-minute lunch and learn webinars. We're actually looking to sprinkle in some 15-minute quick tech updates.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so just those really, really short, sweet, bang, 10 a.m., you've got through your email, you've got your coffee, you're sitting at your desk, Ben's online and he's going to talk about Office 365 or Skype for Business, or some free video conferencing tools. I'm just going to jump on there for 15 minutes and catch up with that just while I take a breather from, my day-to-day.
Yep.
Short and sweet, in and out. So we're going to experiment with that moving forward to see how that goes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing we're really having fun with too is reusing content. This is a great idea, by the way. This is a really solid concept that anybody looking at this whole community education, inbound marketing, etc. thing needs to think about. So I'll give you a great example. We've got a bit of content around Microsoft Office 365 for not-for-profit or non-profit organizations and charitable organizations. Okay, so particularly focused on that particular target. Now, that content and that little bit of information, we've got a couple of blog posts up there. We're in the process of writing an ebook. We've done a podcast episode on it, and we're about to be scheduling a couple of webinars over the course of the year. And it's all on the same content, right? So what you've got is you've really got one source of content, but you're delivering that through multiple channels to potentially to multiple different audiences, because you know what, people like to consume their media in different ways. Some people read it, some people like the audio, some people like some sort of a video side of things, you know, and you're reusing that content. So the more you reuse it, the better your knowledge and depth of your own content becomes, and the more confident you get in presenting it as well. So that's a great little idea that we're working through as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting to get that feedback. By having it across multiple channels, you get different feedback from different areas. And as you say, in terms of your confidence and tweaking and refining that content and that message, that's a really good process to follow, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
So, mate, what do you feel has been your most surprising marketing result so far, or anything that really came out of left field for you that has made a difference?
I'm going to talk about the webinars again, but you know, the same concept and the same theory here applies, I think, to a lot of the other marketing channels. There's one particular topic of webinar content that I was presenting on repeatedly last year. So we ran a number of webinars on the same thing. Topic was Microsoft Office 365 and the cloud. Yeah. So it was just a really high level introduction to what is the cloud for starters, but then a little bit further, what is Microsoft Office 365? And I delivered that content probably twice. So 2 webinars, you know, one month, one the next. And there's a couple of different metrics that I sort of look at with these webinars. For starters, there's how many people sign up. Then there's how many people show up. And then there's how many people actually last through to the end.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's how much of follow-up do you get from it? You know, is there any follow-on questions or discussion or business or anything that comes off the back end of that webinar? Yep. And I did it the first 2 times. And you know what? The stats were pretty good. I mean, we got some good numbers attending the webinar. We got people pretty much coming through to sitting through to the very end of the webinar. So our content obviously didn't get too boring, which was good, but there was no follow-up, right? There was nothing came after it. And so I had a little bit of time. I had half an hour free one afternoon, and I was just doing a little bit of reading online about webinars and how to shape webinars or structure a webinar, I guess, for some results. And I got some interesting ideas out of that. And so all I did was I changed the order, the content that I was presenting within this webinar, and I refocused it a little bit, right? So
Can you share the resources that really made a difference to that?
It came back to a couple. I know there are some of the big podcasters out there like Pat Flynn and so on who certainly have some content there about how to shape a webinar. Yeah. So that you get the results.
Lewis Howes is one that we've certainly learned a lot from.
Lewis Howes has got some great stuff as well. Absolutely. Actually, coming back to Taki Moore, Taki Moore and James Fremko on their Sales Marketing Profit podcast, they've got a little bit of good stuff in there that I remember listening to, which I think was a bit of an eye-opener. I found half an hour, one day, and I just reworked that content a little bit in time for the next webinar. So I ran the next webinar. Again, we got good numbers registering. We got good numbers showing up. Interestingly enough, we had a little bit of drop-off over the course of the webinar, okay? So that was obviously, a new little thing for me to pay attention to. But you know what? Following off the back of that webinar, I got something like a 70% inquiry rate.
Wow.
From those attendees. I could not believe it. So, it's now it wasn't massive numbers. We weren't talking, 500,000 people on this webinar. Sure. I would be retired on the beach by now if that was the case. But, going from almost no follow-on inquiries to something like 60 or 70% follow-up inquiry after that webinar, wow, tell you what. And you know what? The content was the same. The topic was the same. The target audience was the same. The delivery mechanism was the same. The time of day, the tools I was using to deliver it, nothing changed apart from how I thought about my content, how I ordered it and structured it.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And the same thought process obviously can apply to blogging, to podcasts, to all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? And so in terms of, are you comfortable sharing the actual figures? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
that's right.
In terms of the actual number of inquiries that you generated then from that webinar?
Absolutely. So like I said, it wasn't 500. We at that point when we were doing that, because we were still dipping our toes in the water, we were using a webinar tool called Zoom, right? Zoom.us. And it's a great tool, by the way. If anyone needs video conferencing or webinar type software, it's well worth a look. But we were just dipping our toes in the water and using the free plan at that stage from them, which was limited to, look, I can't remember, 25 attendees or something.
Yep.
Okay, I can't remember. So, I mean, it was small numbers, but we were oversubscribed. I mean, there were people who couldn't get onto the webinar. So, maybe we would have taken it up to 26, or maybe we would have taken it up to 500, who knows.
Yep.
But essentially there were 25 people in round numbers on the webinar. I think we probably had 20, it was a little while ago, it was last year. I mean, let's say we had 20 people actually show up.
Yep.
Let's say we had 17 or 16 of those people sort of stay through to the very end because we had a couple of drop-offs there for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do the sums off the back of that. I mean, let's say there were 16 attendees who saw through to the end. Let's say there was actually a 70% inquiry rate off the back of that.
8 or 10 inquiries, hey?
I mean,
That's
wow.
amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. That really moves the dial when you think about, and if that's on the back of your own email list as well, predominantly, then that's a big shift. So,
well, mate,
awesome.
The nature of our business, I mean, we're a business to business, we're a B2B company. We have long-term deep engagements with our clients. We're not sorry, I was about to name a competitor here, but I probably shouldn't do that. We have long-term deep engagements with our clients, so even just one or two new clients for us can actually be significant, in terms of our business.
Absolutely.
So to have those 7 or 8 or whatever the percentage turns into, people proactively contacting me after that webinar saying, Ben, we need to talk. I mean, that's potentially pretty significant.
Yeah, that really does move the needle. And I mean, if you can do that multiple times, then that's incredible. And
you know what? The cost of running a webinar is not very big. I kid you not. So Zoom, the website is zoom.us for a free webinar tool, for a free tool that'll do your webinars. I've certainly got some blog posts up about it as well. You need your email marketing list because you want to promote that to obviously your existing clients, your existing prospects, etc. Look, you could run a little bit of Facebook advertising or whatever. I mean, you could run a webinar for a grand total of, I don't know, $5, in about an hour of your time to put together a PowerPoint deck, and the potential rewards are fantastic. And the potential risk is, well, you know what? None, apart from potentially having nobody to show up to your party, in which case you've recorded it and you've got a fantastic bit of content there that you can post on your blog, that you can share on social media, that you can email and link to potential clients. When they call you, when someone calls out of the blue a week later and says, oh, I'm interested in blah, 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 you say, well, did you see our webinar last week? And they say, oh, no, I missed it. Not a problem. Look, let me send you the link and you can have a look at the webinar and you can see if it's of interest. You've still got a great bit of content there. Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? Well, mate, thanks so much for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the going into the nitty gritty too, and sharing those lessons. 2 final questions then for you, or 3 actually. First is, who do you learn from? Oh, mate, well, obviously you first and foremost. Oh, thanks, mate. Look, as with a lot of us, I think I'm a fairly prolific consumer of content. I read a lot. There's a lot of blogs. There's podcasts I listen to, a lot of articles. So, I mean, there's a huge range of people there. I mean, specifically for some very specific guidance on how to do some very specific things, like almost quite literally how-tos. Okay, for podcasting, there's obviously Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. He's got a fantastic post there on how to start a podcast. Okay, you can't go past that. In terms of writing blogs, mate, you've got some fantastic content on your blog. I know there's a fantastic post that I know has got a fair bit of traction from, was it Will? Yep. There've been numbers. Yeah. Yep. There's been quite a few. Had some great contributions on blogging, particularly. Yep, on how to make some of those ones really stick. There's Moz and HubSpot have both got some amazingly powerful and useful content. Yep. So Moz.com and HubSpot.com, they're definitely 2 of the big names in content marketing. But the content they themselves put out, well, you'd hope it would be pretty good, but the content they themselves put out is, to be honest, a surprisingly consistent source of really constant knowledge. And then, to be honest, a lot of it is listening to my clients and listening to my colleagues and peers in the industry. There's a lot of confidence that comes from talking with other people who are in the same position as you and who are trying these things. There's obviously the Web Marketing That Works podcast. There's obviously, ones out there like Timbo Reed's Small Business, Big Marketing. There's even other stuff in totally unrelated industries, like the Four Blades podcast. Are you into the Thermomix, mate? Have you got into the Thermomix craze?
No, we're not. But we've had Joe jump on our blog and write a post about his Thermomix podcast. It's been pretty interesting.
Oh, mate. So, there's even other stuff like the Four Blades podcast, and you know what? They've actually just released an Apple magazine through the Apple iTunes store. I didn't even know you could do that, to be honest. But looking at some of these marketing activities that other people or, other small businesses are getting into, mate, it's exciting and it's very motivating. And it's actually, a lot of the time, it's about learning from your peers, and more so than learning from some guru.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So, mate, 2 final questions then. Do you have a favourite quote or piece of advice that you use for inspiration?
Oh, you put me on the spot again, mate. I probably do, but you put me on the spot.
Sorry. That's all good. And how can people connect with you then, Ben?
Mate, I'm very discoverable. You can find me, my email, ben@grassrootsit.com.au. The website is www.grassrootsit.com.au. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter _BenLove. I am on Facebook. I am not on Pinterest. And I am not, I'm sorry to say, on Tinder. But apart from that, I am very contactable.
We'll make sure all of those in the show notes anyway, mate. But look, thanks again for joining me. It's been great to talk to you. And again, I really appreciate your insights and sharing your journey there, Ben.
Thank you, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers. So that wraps up the interview with Ben Love. Thanks so much for joining me all the way through. This show is brought to you by our 33 free marketing templates, and you can download those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. And as always, we would love your feedback, any questions you might have, and any guest suggestions as well would be fantastic. You can contact me. I am toby.jenkins@bluewiremedia.com.au, or on Twitter, I'm @Toby_Jenkins. If you enjoyed the show, we would love it if you could leave a review on iTunes, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.